What if you could take that risk, make that change, reach that goal, live your best life? Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast, where we get together with amazing experts and everyday people who share challenges, encourage healing, and explore the possibilities that life has to offer. I'm your host, Gary Scott, and I'm excited that you're along for the ride. Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the What If You Could podcast. And today I have a special guest straight off the SS Enterprise. We have Captain Kirk. How are you, Kirk Beck?
Oh, it's good to be here.
Beam me up, Scotty. Beam me up to the
Yes, amen.
podcast, Scotty. Well, I'm going to go ahead and read the captain's bio real quick, and then we'll get fired away. Is that okay?
Fine, that's good.
Good deal. Um, Kirk Beck is an educator of over 40 years and has dreamed of the day when he can teach things that really matter. His love for kids and mathematics led him to leave his work as an engineer in the Shell Oil Company to devote his life to teaching kids with compassion and truth. Kirk has been an editorialist for the Gannett newspaper and served in the U.S. Army, attaining the rank of captain, known by many as the real Captain Kirk. Not like that other poser guy there. He has dedicated his life to his Christian faith, his family, and the search for the truth regarding America's constitutional common law roots. His understanding of the power of paper has led to the usage of affidavits in many areas. Frederick Baptiste wrote in the law that if the law can be kept in its proper boundaries, it makes no difference who is elected. It is the affidavit process that has led to his numerous successes in defending his own personal liberty from government encroachment. Kirk is the author of Parenting the Passive Rebel. I love that. And is in the process of publishing his second book, Officer Hanson Compassion in Blue. It is this book that Kirk attempts to entertain, educate, and evaluate the souls of the readers to make it the commitment of sacrifice for a more compassionate method for handling potentially violent situations. So, all of that is good stuff, Captain. Again, how are you, sir?
I'm fine. I'm looking forward to this. I'm ready to blast off.
Good. So, because this is the What If You Could podcast, I do have just one question, if I may. And my question is, have you had a what if you could moment? Is there a what if you could you'd love to share with us? And what would your what if you could be?
Very well. Yes, I had that what if you could moment yesterday again. I have it periodically when I once again have it brought to my attention how relatively easy it is to change government's direction, at least locally and most specifically individually. As I tell people often, I can make myself more liberated, but I can't help you too much unless you're willing to do something. So what would I do if I could be want to be a very accomplished motivator to get people to believe that it's not impossible to turn this country around and to get away from the mindset of the winning the next election, in, instead learning how to do the affidavit process, or what I call the power of paper, to get government back inside its constitutional box. So I always begin by explaining what an affidavit is. It's simply a notarized statement of facts based upon valid constitutional evidence, facts, and for a notary, which could be AAA or could be your local bank or credit union, and a government official. A notary is an official of the court. may be sitting at a bank, but they're still nevertheless officials of the court. They notarize it and it becomes a legal document. When that legal document is sent through the mail by certification and the recipient receives it, they have a responsibility, to answer. Now, for the listeners, I want them to know that I have a special offer at the end of this recording. It'll be free to them, and they'll, a little bit later on, I'll explain what it is. But it has to do with the affidavit process. When that government official, or in the case of a corporate official, because I had a problem with Best Buy recently also, when they receive that, we notify them that they have a lawful responsibility to answer. If they don't answer, we notify them that everything in the affidavit could be used against them in any court in America, which includes the small claims court or the traffic court. You don't have to go to a superior court in order to use this. Matter of fact, it's probably more effective in traffic or small claims court. And you notice the offending party if you're a plaintiff. In my Best Buy case, I was the plaintiff. In the traffic case, I was the defendant, so called. And the process begins when they receive that affidavit. Now they have 30 days to respond. And my mentors, who've been doing this for 6 decades, Jack and Margie Flynn, have never, ever gotten a rebuttal from a lawyer on any of their affidavits. And I've sent out well over a dozen, and I've not gotten any rebuttals either. Now, in some cases, we didn't go any farther, but in 5 cases, I got what I wanted. And that's why I'm so energized, and that's why I'm so desirous of trying to help Americans. We, the people, have the power to control government. We just haven't been taught. I didn't know this until 8 years ago.
So
What makes me a little more distinctive than the average?
let me walk you back for a second, just so that people can understand. So, say someone was harmed by someone, in this case, Best Buy, or you felt harmed by someone, and you wanted redress, right? You wanted someone to take action on what had happened. So you would go to an attorney to get an affidavit filled out, then have it notarized, or can you just write down what you want and have it notarized?
Uh, I stay a long ways away from attorneys. Uh, at one time in America, if there were 2 books in a person's home, if they were well educated at all, they had the Bible and they had Blackstone's commentaries on the law. Americans knew the law. They understood common law. And if there was a question, they would just go to Blackstone and they would read it. And you could get together and discuss it and decide what the decision should be. Well, we don't have no, if you ask the average American today who's Blackstone, they wouldn't know. Most people don't read their Bible, so they don't understand these are law books. They're given to us. We don't need to have an attorney fill out an affidavit for it. Now, in most of the cases that I'm involved in, there is no victim. We have an increasing amount of what we call positive law taking place in America. I don't consider it positive at all, but the reason why they call it positive is because typically law is a response to an action that hurts somebody. It's an action that's negative upon the perpetrator of the crime. But in positive law, there's no victim. We just simply want to, the government wants to direct us in a way, a pattern of living. So, and we have a tendency to just, well, it seems reasonable that I don't speed down the road at 90 miles an hour. So, well, that's reasonable, but rolling stop at 2 o'clock in the morning when there's nobody around, because that's how it started with me. back in Colorado 50 years ago. And I began to think, what's going on here? There's no victim. And where does the money go? It goes to the government who wrote me the ticket. And that was how I got started. I'm just a curious person. I don't, when I see something uh, in the world that's curious, I want to check it out. And that was the case when I found myself on oh boy, I found myself on jury, a jury trial. And at one point, the judge had me on the jury pool, and I was listening to his caveats. And when he got done, he turned to me and he said, juror number 14, I see by your body language you've got a problem. I said, yeah, sure. He said, would you please explain it? And for 5 minutes, I got the court's attention. And I pointed out what I saw in the courtroom that was not going properly. And he dismissed me. He said I could leave. Well, the average person at that point would go home. I'm not the average person because the next day I came back, sat behind the defendant because I wanted to check out with him whether or not I was right. I adjourned for lunch. I went out with the defendant, who, by the way, was defending himself against 17 felony accounts, all having to do with real estate scam. So I asked him, I said, when the judge corrected you on day one about why you chose not to have an attorney, I noticed how you were shaking your head back and forth. You weren't agreeing with it. What was that all about? And he said, well, I went out with an attorney to see if we could work together. And he totally blindsided me when we came back in the courtroom. The judge asked him, can you work together? And the attorney stood up and said, Your Honor, based upon my observations with the defendant, I would recommend a full psychiatric evaluation.
Wow.
Yeah. The only thing the defendant really wanted was to have an attorney sit next to him and help him negotiate the rules of the court. He didn't want to give up. When you have an attorney, the court has rendered you incompetent and you do not talk unless the judge gives you permission to talk. Well, I learned this many years before when I was dealing with a court situation and I had an attorney and I tried to speak and the judge reprimanded me quickly. So I figured that's what was going on, and that's exactly what was true. So I talked more to him, and that's when he told me about Jack and Margie Flynn, who at the time were in the state of Maine, and we're trying to help him deal with his crime. Is now here, there was an actual crime. There was actually somebody, quite a few people, who actually got defrauded of their money. So it's a different situation than the one I find myself in. Since I don't go around hanging, this guy was hanging around with people who were scamming. His defense was, I didn't know what was going on. But I'm talking about positive law, where basically there's no victim, and the government just telling us how we're supposed to act. That's where the affidavit process is very, very effective. Whenever there's um, a situation where there's injustice going on, an affidavit is very helpful. But especially in the area of positive law, it becomes very effective because in most cases, I just have to give them the paper. My first case was just a rolling stop. Now, I always admit to the public that I'm a recidivist when it comes to rolling stops. I don't speed. I don't drink and drive. I don't file fail, or I don't follow people closely. But if it's 10 o'clock at night and there's nobody around, I have a tendency not to come to a full stop. Well, every once in a while, there's a police officer who's hiding himself in a very nice place where I can't see him. And I'm out here in California for 35 years. I've been stopped 5 times. No, that's not that bad, but never for speeding, always for rolling stop. And every time I go to court and I argue, I'll even try to argue the Constitution. It doesn't get me anywhere. But when I learned from Jackie and Marty Flynn, the first step in due process of law is to notify your opponent so that he or she has an opportunity to rebut you. See what the court wants. They don't want to have any cases in front of them at all. They want people to work it out. So he gave me the ticket. I went home and I wrote him a real nice letter, not an affidavit, because Jack and Margie Flynn are big on being polite, being tactful. So I wrote him a letter, told him what he did wrong, and he didn't respond. Now, I did send that certified, so he had to sign for it. Now, 30 days went by. I had my court case 90 days out in front of me, so I still had plenty of time. Now I went home and I wrote him the affidavit. And I specifically pointed out to him his responsibility to answer. And at the end, what happens if he doesn't? Everything can be used against you, Officer Sloniger, in every court in America. Now, Gary, the body of the affidavit depends on the circumstances. I had one that went to the Supreme Court of the state of South Dakota. I had one that went to an assemblywoman. I had one that went to Best Buy, and I had one that went to a deputy sheriff. Well, obviously, these are different situations entirely. But I'm sure when he got an affidavit that he had to sign for, he didn't throw that in the trash. He sent that up to the chief legal eagle for the sheriffs. And I'm not sure what the legal eagle told the deputy, but when the deputy walked into the courtroom, he gave something to the bailiff. The bailiff presented it to the judge. The judge read it, and within a minute, he said, "Mr. Beck, are you here?" Oh, oh yeah. "Mr. Beck, your case has been dropped. You may leave." So I didn't have to say a word, but I did have to show up. I thought about it later. I bet I wouldn't have gotten off if I had not showed up. But I did show up. And I always tell people, take witnesses with you. Don't ever go to court by yourself. And when you leave the courtroom, make sure you go to the clerk and you get the minute order. You want to make sure you read it. Oh, yeah, it says exactly what happened because I failed to do that one time. And that's how I learn law. I learn by doing. And I'm sure we can all admit I learned a lot because of my mistake. So I make mistakes in court. I make less now than I used to. I'm not intimidated by courtrooms anymore because in some cases, I really believe I know the law better than the judge does because the judge doesn't deal with common law. The judge only deals with statutory jurisdiction. Now, listen to this quotation from the Declaration of Independence. He, speaking of the king, as combined with others, speaking of Parliament and the colonial governor, he has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution. Stop. Declaration of Independence, 1776, U.S. Constitution, 1787. Jefferson's not talking about the United States Constitution. He's talking about the rule of law that guided the American colonies from the beginning, the common law of England. So let's put it all together. He has combined with others to subject us to a jurisdiction foreign to our Constitution, giving his assent to their acts of pretended legislation. Some people call that color of law. It looks like law, it sounds like law, but if it's not constitutional, it's not law. In the United States of America, the Constitution of the United States is the supreme law of the land. And no statute passed by any government, any ordinance passed by any government, can supersede the Constitution of the United States. So what we, the people, are supposed to do, according to Ben Franklin, who was asked, what kind of a government did you give us? And said, public, then it's our job to know the law sufficient in order to keep it. And when government steps outside the boundary, which they do almost constantly, because we have given them tacit approval to do so by our silence, they just keep getting worse and worse and worse because nobody's calling them to account. So we go back to your question at the beginning. What would you do if you could? I would shake Americans up in enough numbers to get this stopped. All we need are a number of, we don't need 10% of the American people to do this. That's why I still work on elections. When I find somebody who's really good, I work on the election primarily because I just like to hang out with people who are trying to do something good. And once again, the good guy that I was supporting lost. But I don't fall apart over elections because I recognize how important the power of paper is and how we can win without having to win an election. And if I have to win an election, I'm going to have to get 51% of the American people who are going to vote to agree with me. But if I'm going to have effective affidavits, in some cases, I don't need to agree with. Traffic case, I don't expect anybody to agree with me. It's too limited in its scope. But nevertheless, on these other issues, I need more people. I have, we have, Gary, we have a very arrogant, egregious attorney general who is just worse than Kamala Harris by far. And he wants to become governor. And I'm saying, no, let's nail him now, get it on the record that he violates his oath to the Constitution of the United States, and that makes him ineligible to run. But I can't do this alone. In a county of Riverside, if I had 30 people doing what I'm doing, I would be a powerful force for good. It would be called Remedy at Law Riverside. I'm trying to work with people one-on-one. I'm going to meet with my councilman next week and try to explain to him the people are asking too much out of you. I want you to help me get them to understand what they can do. Because we have one guy in Riverside, one guy. He's way ahead of me. When he walks into the room, everybody knows he's there, and they know they better cross all their T's and dot all their I's, or he's going to catch them. And he kind of likes doing that. He is what I would call Riverside City's ombudsman. You got a problem, I know where to go. He can help me deal with financial things because he's a financial guy. He reads financial statements the way I read comic books. And he's very, very gifted at it. And that's what we need. We just need a few people like that. And then we just get educated and we go out and we control government. And we always treat government officials with respect. No vulgarities, no calling them stupid. They just are not uneducated. Gary, I went to my state senator and my assemblywoman. I took witnesses with me. And I began by asking them, according to the Declaration of Independence, what is the purpose of government? And you invariably get something like this: to protect the people. Well, I said, according to the Declaration of Independence, not according to what you think. Well, I don't know. Oh, you've been in the state Senate for 8 years and you don't know why you're supposed to be up there. The assemblywoman had only been there for about 6 months, so I didn't fault hers too much. But they both know now: life, liberty, pursuit of happiness, period. Next words: that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men. Stop right there. When you go up to Sacramento, you're supposed to secure my rights. How dare you try to pass a statute that infringes upon my rights or the rights of Gary Scott? Because by golly, under common law, if they're going after Gary Scott and I know it, I have a moral responsibility to help Gary Scott. And that's something they don't want me to have any standing in their court. They want to shove me aside and say, oh, just between me and Gary. No, it's not. Not if you step outside your boundaries and you're attacking him on his rights. I'm here too. And that's why you're going to get an affidavit from me, an affidavit from him, and him, because we all see what you're doing to Gary and we don't like it. And if you don't stop it, we're coming after you. We are giving you the opportunity to repent. We don't want to throw you out of office. We don't want you to lose your job. We certainly don't want you to lose your pension also. But that's where this is headed if you don't stop. Now, when they get letters like that, they probably throw them in the trash. When they get an affidavit, they have to sign for it. They don't throw it in the trash. My assemblywoman, 6 months later, is trying to pass a statute that would make my pastor a felon. A felon. For doing what? For offering counsel to someone with sexual questions. Nobody's dragging that person into his office. They're coming on their own free will. But according to her understanding of the situation, since one out of 1,000 people went to a pastor like that and then committed suicide, they're going to want an egregious statute to be passed that affects all of us in our right to simply say what we believe to be true. So we sent her the affidavit, and I would never say it was just because of what I did, but what other people were writing letters as well. All we know is that a statute that had been passed by the Assembly, had been passed by the Senate, that was coming together for reconciliation, and Jerry Brown was waiting to sign the bill. It got pulled. It got pulled. It never became law. Now, 6 months later, there was a resolution. Now, my assemblywoman had sponsored the statute. A resolution came out 6 months later with just simply saying to the pastors, hey, knock it off. Don't give that kind of counsel. There's no law, there's no statute, just don't do it. Just a resolution. My assemblywoman did not even sponsor the resolution. She had had some kind of a check that maybe people are watching me on this particular issue, so maybe I'll just stay out of this. She voted for it, but she didn't sponsor it. And a resolution to me isn't a serious infraction. If they want to tell me what I think I ought to do, that's okay. I think it's okay. I haven't thought about it too much. If they're spending a lot of my taxpayer money doing it, then it's a problem. But if they're just giving me an idea of what I ought to be doing, I don't have a problem with that. When you're passing a law that's going to put my priest or my pastor in jail, it bothers me a lot. And I'm going to come to his defense. You're not going to get away with that.
What is positive law?
It's where the government is basically telling you what to do rather than what you should not do. A crime is pretty obvious. Somebody's complaining doing a traffic stop. Where's the verified complaint? Who's complaining about it? 2 o'clock in the morning, there's nobody even around. You're around hiding behind the tree over there, but nobody's complaining. Well, under statutory jurisdiction, the police officer can do that. Under the common law, there's no victim, there's no crime. Somebody has to complain about it. I live in Riverside City, and I rode around with the people who they check out houses to see if they're I forget what they call that. They just go around and give citations if you don't clean your yard or something like that. You'll come to me in a minute. But I rode with them and I said, now I don't understand. That house over there is a mess. You drove right by it. Now you're going over this house. I see there's a problem there, but his house, that's a bigger problem over there. I said, we can't do anything unless somebody complains. Oh, seems reasonable. If some guy is doing terrible stuff next door to me and I don't complain about it, I guess it's not a big problem. If it's first thing I do, if somebody next door causing a problem, I go there and talk to them about the problem. If that didn't work, the next thing I do is talk to my other neighbors and say, is that a problem over there to you? It is? How about you? Yeah, yeah, okay. Well, let's all 4 or 5 of us go over and talk to them. If that didn't work, then I would have to go to an affidavit and have to take them to court. But treat people the way you want to be treated. Would you like to get paperwork saying you're going to go to court? Somebody else, I didn't even know the problem. They didn't let me know what the problem was. And now they want to take me to court. Now, I had that happen to me. Sunday morning, somebody's knocking on my door. I went to the door and they were serving me papers. What is this about? Well, uh, it was good in one sense because I realized how it affected me to get something I have to sign for. I took it very seriously what I'm looking at. In my case, it was simply Planned Parenthood telling me they didn't like me and they didn't want me anywhere around their facility. Okay, so we went to court on that. They wanted to get a restraining order on me. All I'm doing down there is just talking to people when they go in and out. That's all I was doing. But see, I learned law by doing something. I learned that restraining order is something that you can deal with. You don't have to give in to that. Uh,
So how do how
so
do how do affidavits how are affidavits going to save the country? How are we going to save the country with affidavits?
well, if a government official it doesn't get checked, they will just continue to grow in their misdeeds like a cancer grows. But if you hit one with their misdeeds and you bring it to their attention, it can shrivel up faster. Because we had here's another COVID problem. We had I'm in Riverside County. You're not too far away. I'm not sure. Are you in Riverside County? Or are you San Bernardino? Well, then you got the same sheriff I got. And you know what he's like. He told Governor Newsom, I'm not enforcing these mandates. They're mandates and not laws. They're not even statutes, for crying out loud. You think I'm going to do it? Go. I'm not going to go into churches and tell people to social distance. So we had a sheriff on our side, but we had a medical officers going around intimidating restaurants to close. Well, by providence, we got a hold of David Martin out in Massachusetts, and he'd done a tremendous amount of legal work as well as scientific work on masking and social distancing and all that. And he put a paper together called the Fauci dossier. I took it personally to the chief medical officer's office and I laid it on his desk and I said, "You need to read this because what you're doing is improper." He continued to do it. So we gave him the affidavit. The the I did. I could have taken him to court, but I thought, wait a second, I'm going to do what Margie and Jack say. If there is a supervisor over that hireling, put your affidavit in an envelope along with another affidavit to the supervisor, explaining to the supervisor that you have somebody who's violating a federal code of regulation on how it's imperative that you have an independent review board look into the situation before you start issuing mandates. They never did that. They didn't do it in Riverside County. They didn't do it anywhere in the United States. So we sent that to the supervisor. Now, this is the only time the supervisor ever called me up on the phone. I've lived out here for 35 years. I've never had a supervisor call me on the phone. He called me on the phone and he was not happy because I was calling him out that his responsibility is to deal with this hireling, otherwise it's on you. And I think he recognized that, what he's saying is true. So he read me out, but then all I know is it was, I think, within a couple of months, they're having a meeting with the chief medical officer. And the end result, I'm leaving out some details, the end result was he's not the chief medical officer anymore. He's not even in the state of California anymore. He's not even in the country anymore. He's in Australia. We didn't want him to have to lose his job. But the final notice was he lost his job. I don't know what anything else happened. I'm waiting for my supervisor to no longer be, and our supervisor that called me on the phone, he's like a lot of Californians. He's going to take his pension and move to Idaho. But I hope a chance to see him before he leaves. But maybe he just opened up to me more about what happened with that situation because we got what we wanted. They stopped pushing the mandates in Riverside County. They didn't have a sheriff that wanted it, and the new chief medical officer was a lot more timid in pressing officials and restaurant owners to abide by Governor Newsom's mandate. Our job is to hold government accountable. We do that best at the local level. If we can't do it at the local level, we won't be effective at the state level. If we can't control the state, we won't be able to control the federal government. We have to start with local school districts, water department. We had a situation here in Riverside where they wanted to raise the utility rates. Riverside Public Utility wanted to raise the utility rates 10% per month for 10% per year for 5 consecutive years. That's a 50% increase in utility rates. Wow. The outcry was so great that they moved the meeting from the city council chambers to the county supervisor chamber. And businessman after businessman went up and complained about what that's going to do to their business. The one guy I talked about earlier, named Jason, he put something on the overhead. I couldn't read it, but the 7 council people could all read it. When it was over, I went to Jason and I said, "What do you think is going to happen?" He said, "I'll tell you exactly what's going to happen. By the end of the week, the RPU director will resign." What? He'll resign. Oh, okay. 1 week later, RPU director resigned. On the phone, Jason, what was on the overhead? I couldn't read it. What was on that? And he said it was basically conclusive evidence that the RPU director was in collusion with somebody at UCR that was supposed to be doing an independent audit on the financials that give credibility for a need for the increase in utility rates. He was basically saying, hey, these numbers aren't good enough. I need better numbers in order to justify what I'm trying to pull off over here.
Wow.
Well, the next question, well, Jason, how'd you get that? Well, see, Jason had worked at RPU. And when he went to work at RPU, he's that guy who told me he reads financials the way I read comic books. They hired somebody who had been running a hedge fund on energy stocks. And he took the financials apart and said, hey, there's really no need for any utility rates. We've got all this money over here and money over there and money over there. We could probably reduce the rate. You need to be quiet about that, Jason, or you're going to leave. And they did. They fired him. But he said, well, that's all right because I only sue people when I know I'm going to win. And he got his wrongful termination lawsuit. It took 2 years, but he eventually won a lot of money. Well, the people at RPU that are the good guys, they know where the good guy is out there. So when they had the evidence, they just send the evidence over to Jason, and Jason puts it up on the screen for 7 council people to look at it, and there's no question that RPU director is going to go.
Yeah. Yeah. Let me ask you about the your book. I I love the title of Parenting the Passive Rebel. I love that. I've got a grandchild. I think I should get it for him. I got a 2-year-old grandson.
Well, I, my goal was to publish the big book, but I'm working with a publisher, and he says, no, I want you to work on a small book first, because this is a very small book. It would be a booklet. And the whole thing came about, I was running a private school back in Colorado before I moved to California. And I had a young boy in there named Doug. And he was very clever, but he was very frustrating because he wasn't getting any of his work done. We have all the students working in modules. So if you want to be a slow guy, you don't affect anybody else. If you want to be a fast guy, you can go through a grade and a half in a year if you want. We'll just keep giving you the module. Well, Doug had been there for 13 weeks, and he was supposed to get at least one module done every week, and he only had about half of that. And I tried all different kinds of things to goad him, take things away from him, hold him in at lunchtime, and nothing really affected him. So I finally went to the pastor and I said, look, I feel like I'm a thief. We're taking money from this family and he's not producing any work. I'm sorry, but I think we need to terminate him. Pastor said, well, I'll talk to the mother. That was a problem right there. There is a father, but he's only going to talk to the mother. The father's not there. Here's where most of the problem's coming from. Nevertheless, mom cries her eyes out. Pastor comes back to me and says, no, I can't get rid of him. We got to come up with something. Well, I'd already been thinking about the something. I said, I'll take him back into my classroom, but I want this compromise. I want Doug to go home with me Monday night, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, and Thursday night, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday at home. I apply only one rule. If a man does not work, neither shall he eat. Proverbs says, a man's hunger works for him, for his appetite urges him on. So that's it. But Doug, you want to play with Rubik's Cube all day in class? That's fine. But remember, you don't eat. It's 4 o'clock. I'm going home. Doug, have you finished any of your work? No. Let's go. 7 o'clock, we're ready to eat. 6 o'clock, we're ready to eat. Doug, have you got your work done? No. We're going to eat. That's okay. 9 o'clock, Doug, we're all going to bed. Are you, are you, is your work done? No. Playing with his Rubik's Cube still. It's very frustrating. Fortunately, my frustration did not last much longer. By 6 o'clock in the morning, Doug was not just hungry, Doug was famished. He had eaten now in 24 hours, and he went right to the refrigerator. And I said, Doug, what are you doing? I'm hungry. Well, I know you're hungry, but is your work? Well, no, hungry. Well, get back and get your work done and tell me when it's done. Bring it to me. We'll get it graded, and then you can go down and eat. 9 o'clock in the morning, it's all done. Well, that's work that's supposed to take from 7:30 in the morning till maybe 2:30 in the afternoon. He's got it all done by 9 because he's smart. He's kind of bored by my class, I think. So I said, go down and eat. Doug ate, came back. I said, now, Doug, the same rule applies for Tuesday. You can eat as soon as your work's done. Well, it's lunchtime. I don't expect him to have it all done by lunchtime because I've already put the rule in effect from the day before. So it's okay. And Gary, I only had one other incident in 7 weeks. He went from getting 7 units done to about 24 in half the time because he started to enjoy it a little bit. I get my work done that I can play. You get it done, work done at 10 o'clock, you can start playing with all this stuff. And then you can go ahead and eat too because it's all done. So in my book, I try to list out five things you do not do and use some wisdom. Now, I don't want to go into all of them. I'll just mention the worst one of all. Ignore the problem. That's the worst one. If you ignore it, you're teaching the kid you're not of any value to me. I could care less if you do. And you won't like the outcome of that when he's 16. So you can't ignore it. But you can plan ahead. And here's an example that's in the book. I knew a woman who's a very wise young lady. She talked to her son about proper conduct at the grocery store. Look, they're going to put all kinds of candy stuff right at the end, and they're going to try and tempt you to want this, that, and that. Do you understand? Yeah, I understand. Well, they're checking out, and he starts acting up that he wants something. And she had it all planned. She turned to the clerk and she said, I'm going to park my cart right over here. I need to take my son to the car for a minute. If I'm not back in 10 minutes, you can assume I'm not coming, that I went home. So he took the boy to the car, tried to explain the situation to him. He didn't repent sufficiently. She said, okay, we're just going home. That night, they didn't have any milk. Everybody drank water. And it was clear that the reason why they drank water was because little Billy acted up at the store. Now, the key point here is take the time to clarify the problem and then consistently apply the rule. I don't care if the kid's 3 years old. You have to take time to try and explain to them why the rule's in place and listen to what he's got to say. He might say something very profound at 3. But the bottom line is the hard part is the consistent thing. When possible, plan for conflict. Expect conflict so that if it comes, you're ready to deal with it. There'll be times when you don't have any plan and you'll just do the best you can. But the more planning you do, the better the results. So that when you have a kid that's 16 years old, you're going to be really happy that you've got somebody that mature that is that helpful. And you're never going to lose this kid. They'll always be one of your best friends, your own kids. That's the essence of parenting the passive rebel.
I love that. I love that. Now, you were going to share with us something. I mean, this hour flew by. I can't believe it. But you were going to share with us something that people can reach out to you and get. You gave us a little teaser at the beginning.
Yeah.
So, what is it that people can reach out to you and get by what? Your website? Tell us about that.
Well, the free gift I got is the template that I use for the affidavit with the key first paragraph and the key last paragraph. In most cases, there's not a lot of changes you need to make to the first paragraph. The one that usually comes up the most is the Second Amendment right to carry a weapon. Obviously, if we're not talking about guns, there's no reason why the Second Amendment should be mentioned in the first paragraph. So in most cases, all of mine, I don't mention the Second Amendment. But all the other amendments, one, two, not one, two, one, four, five, nine, they're usually in all of them. So you have to take out your Constitution and you've got to read what those are. And you'll understand, well, yeah, I can see how that applies to my traffic case. So you'll get the first paragraph, and I just got a call from a guy in Wisconsin. He had an incident with a game warden. Well, here he got guns. So I told him for a while, and I said, now listen, what you have to do is you have to play around with the body of the law. And this guy blew me away, Gary, because he went to AI, artificial intelligence, and had artificial intelligence write the affidavit. I've never done that. I write all my own. And I'm reading it and saying, well, this is pretty darn good. How does this guy's pretty sharp? He doesn't need much help from me. He got it from artificial intelligence. So I'm thinking, my goodness sakes, this could really speed up a lot of process and make a lot of people more likely to do something. Because I told my friend Scott, his first name is Scott. I said, Scott, you do it, send it to me, I'll look it over. Because that's what Margie and Jack did to me. They never wrote anything for me. They said, no, you do it first and then send it over. We'll give you our comment. So that's what I'm doing. He wrote it. Hey, the affidavit was pretty darn good. I just saw one thing that was wrong, and you fix that. I think you're okay. There's a couple other things I'd tweak. That's up to you. We talked about it later, and we decided to tweak it a little bit. But generally speaking, it was ready to go. But he used my first paragraph and he used my last paragraph. What he had to do different, he had to research the Wisconsin state constitution. We referenced the federal constitution, which doesn't vary, versus the state constitution, which all mine are California, but all his are different, but they're essentially the same. It's just the numbering might be different. So you match up the Wisconsin, um, your right to privacy, your right to be free from unreasonable searches. That's the Fourth Amendment. In the federal, it could be something different in Wisconsin. And he did that. He put it together, and that was all he had to do. And now he's in the process of sending his affidavit to the warden. The warden's going to get something he's never gotten before. The warden even said, the law I'm enforcing is stupid. I agree it's stupid. It's unconstitutionally stupid. So, but let's just deal with the unconstitutional part. See, I never emphasize this quite enough. They took an oath to defend the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic. We have far, far, far more domestic enemies than we do foreign enemies. And we always knew that would be the case. Jefferson knew that was going to happen. People figure out it's a lot easier just to control government. Al Capone, Dillinger, those guys paid with their lives for robbing banks. We got worse government, and if they get caught, usually just say, It's a scandal, you need to resign. Oh, we'll still give you your pension, but you need to resign.
Right.
And that needs to be addressed. If you're involved in scandal, you don't get a pension.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Well,
that's what you get. You get the
Captain
affidavit.
Kirk, I we haven't even got started. We're gonna have to redo another one of these. We're gonna have to do part two of this because there's just this hour just flew by, and there's just you've got so much. There's so much more I want to get into with you, that we haven't even scratched the surface yet.
But one thing, how do they get the free gift?
Ah, yes. How
Ah,
do
yeah.
they get the free gift? Please let us know.
At the end, you'll put it up on the screen.
Yep.
Affidavit secrets.com/Gary.
Okay.
That's good with you. Affidavit,
Yep.
singular, secrets, plural.com/Gary. It'll be live tomorrow. So
Perfect.
Gary and everybody else can go there, and that will introduce you to my book as well, because I have to put this last plug in.
Yes.
Anna Sewell wrote one book, Black Beauty. She lived long enough to see that it was a bestseller, and then she died. Her whole purpose was not to write a bestseller, but to educate people how valuable horses are. Kirk Beck is going to write one book. The other one's a booklet. I hope I live long enough to see it a bestseller, and it'll teach Americans how to control government. I use it's a fictional um, protagonist, but it's all based upon things that have actually happened in my life or have happened to police officers who are friends of mine. I like to say they are peace officers, not police officers. When they're peace officers, we have no problem. When they become police officers, that's when we have problems. So my book teaches cops how to behave by giving them a model. And then the last eight chapters of my book have to do with the power of paper. I want to get people to enjoy reading a really nice, good book, got some romance in it. And at the end, they learn, my goodness, that's how we could control our county. So I'm laying a trap for them, Gary.
Are you gonna tease the name? Are you gonna let us know the name of your book? I know the name, but I'm not gonna say it unless you don't
Oh,
want
I'm
me to
glad.
say
Officer Hanson, Compassion in Blue.
There you go. Now, when is this going to be out? Officer Hanson, Compassion in Blue. When is this going to be out?
Well, like I'm going to go to Wisconsin and I'm going to tell everybody there I came here. I'm not asking for any help, except I need this book published. So this is what I'm asking you to do to help book. Now, when they go online and they get the free gift, they will start getting a chapter by chapter summary of the book.
Wow, awesome.
So my marketing guy has said, you got to keep giving people something free.
Mhm.
Eventually, they're going to like you enough that they might actually buy something from you. Because I
Yes.
do have the Power of Paper course that's available also. And it's at a 50% off from the normal price for anybody who goes through affidavitsecrets.com/Gary.
Awesome.
Okay.
Well, we're going to make sure all those links are on the podcast. And then I know when you go to that, it has a little blurb and a waiting list about the Officer Hanson, Compassion in Blue. And I mean, you've got just so much great stuff, Captain Kirk. I just love it. I just love it. And there's so much more I want to go into, next time we chat about you saving our government because we desperately need it. We desperately need it. So, but I just wanted to let everybody just thank you. We've got Kirk Beck. He has a great booklet, Parenting the Passive Rebel. And we're all going to help him get Officer Hanson, Compassion in Blue out. But we'll put the links to your other stuff you have about our affidavit and about your courses and get more people on the Kirk Beck wagon.
Lord of God, I like that.
All right, my friend. I appreciate you so much. Everybody, thank you for Kirk Beck and thanks for listening to another episode of the What If You Could podcast. We'll see you soon. Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye. Thanks again for joining us on another episode of What If You Could podcast. Please subscribe, like, share, and give us any feedback. We'd love to hear it. And remember, if you can dream it, you can do it. See you next time.